From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell and I've flown from Adelaide to Brisbane following the Border-Gavaskar trophy around, but not until I'd climbed Mount Lofty in Adelaide Hills overlooking the city. And when I was up there, I did find a few other bereft cricket fans who were otherwise looking for day 5 of a test match, which had long finished. But such is the way of things these days. And also before I left Adelaide, I got a tour behind the scenes of Port Adelaide Football Club. Now, Australian rules football is not that well known outside of Australia, but gave me a great chance to look at a very different skill set involved in a sport. And it is the club that my mum's side of the family has always supported. And I have a very big soft spot for and connection with. So it's great to have a look at their whiz-bang facilities in the suburb of Alberton.
Hi, it's Jim Maxwell for the ABC back in Sydney. After an interesting time in Adelaide, I was hit low with the virus. So I got to see and watch most of the test, but from my hotel room, which wasn't the best. But there you go. These things happen. The older you get, the more careful you've got to be. Don't you think, Sunil?
Yeah, absolutely. You can say that again because it's a very, very cold New Delhi. Yesterday I was playing tennis. I had 6 layers on. So it was really cold. You can understand that. But I'll tell you what's even odder and colder. And that is what we call the mystery of Muhammad Shami. And I don't know whether you remember that song from Alice in Wonderland, the Lobster Quadrille, where the whiting said to the snail, will he, won't he, will he, won't he? Every day we get, his skit is left and he's be going and then he suddenly got a swelling in the knee. So it's a mystery to pass all mysteries. But the funny thing is, I think India's got the wrong end of the stick. It's not the bowling so much, it is the batting. And I will reveal some stats as we go along, which I hope, Jim, will make you sit up even more.
He's sitting up. He's sitting up. And I'll be on Shami watch here in Brisbane. I'll let you know if there are any sightings as the test match goes on. Jim, great to see you looking much better and sounding well. But first of all, before we get to the Border-Gavaskar trophy, let's start with events in New Zealand, because it has been a series of firsts for England's men. Now, England are 2-0 up in the 3-match series with 1 match to play after beating New Zealand by 8 wickets in Christchurch and then by a mammoth 323 runs in Wellington. It means England have clinched their first Test series win away in 2 years, and it's their first series win in New Zealand in Tests since 2008. Meanwhile, Gus Atkinson took his first ever Test hat-trick in the win in Wellington. That was the first hat-trick by an England bowler in Tests since Moeen Ali, if you remember, against South Africa at the Oval in 2017. It was also the first hat-trick anyone had taken in men's Tests since the South African spinner Keshav Maharaj against West Indies back in 2021. So a rare feat. England's margin of victory in the second Test was their biggest ever in terms of runs against New Zealand. And so after losing the Test series in Pakistan in October, England do seem to be back to playing in their swashbuckling and a rather ruthless style. Their third match of the series gets underway in Hamilton on December the 14th. So they're looking to try and do something special, a 3-0 sweep over New Zealand. Jim and Sunil, how impressed have you been with these scorelines and these feats coming out of New Zealand in the last couple of weeks?
I'm impressed for England, depressed for New Zealand after their excellent performance in India. And it's the old momentum number. I mean, I don't think I've seen a goodish Test team, if I can describe New Zealand as that, shell as many chances as they did in the first Test. They must have dropped about 8 catches. And there was no recovery from that, and they let Brook go and the rest of it. And really, they haven't been up to it with the bat either against a very useful England attack. This fella, Cass, he can bang it in. I know he's a South African, but, he's going to be playing for England for a while. So, yes, he's in there doing his bit along with Atkinson and even the young spinner Bashir chipping in. But New Zealand's batting has been very disappointing. And again, in both games, once they lost momentum, they were going to lose the game. But the form of some of the England players has been outstanding. Even Pope batting at number 6 seems to be a good idea. So, yes, England are playing extremely well. They still pay lip service to over rates, which may be morally right as far as Stokes is concerned. But look at the points table for the WTC and you'll see what it's cost them. probably a place, or more than likely a place in the final as a result of not at least trying to keep up with the over 8, despite the fact that they finished games inside 4 days.
Yeah, well, when Jim was talking about New Zealand and how many catches they spilt and batting, I almost thought he was talking about India. I mean, if you've seen the amount of catches that India have dropped, and you've seen the Indian batting. And what I love about England is that they don't mind trying new players. You talked about Cars, Jim, right? There's Cars, there's Atkinson, who came in about a year ago and took, I think, a fifer at Lord's against Sri Lanka, if I remember correctly. And then you've got Jamie Smith, who was there. He's been very, very good as a keeper and a batsman. And now you've got Jacob Bethel. That is what you need. When teams are failing or withering away, like New Zealand and certainly like India, you need fresh blood. And I think that's what England have demonstrated. I think they've kept some really good, people who with experience, but all the others are out and the new ones are performing. And that is the most impressive thing about England to me.
Yep, they took some ruthless decisions, didn't they? After Stuart Broad's retirement, they then said, right, James Anderson, you've had enough. They said, Johnny Bairstow, you've had enough. They ushered in Jamie Smith, and you're right, Gus Atkinson, his opportunity, Bryden Cass and Jacob Bethel. Harry Brook has obviously been in the team a little bit longer, but I mean, goodness, he is just stoking the fire, isn't he? Every time he plays, 200s in this series so far. He's now gone to number 1 in the ICC Test batting rankings. The man he's replaced, Joe Root, has described him as the best player in the world at the moment. Jim, 8 Test hundreds for Harry Brook in his first 23 tests. 7 of them have come away from home, which leads me, of course, to say to you, the Ashes in Australia. Should Australia be very worried about Harry Brook?
Oh, no more worried than Joe Root or 1 or 2 others on their best form. But yes, he's an outstanding player. He's making his way, and I'm sure he'll make runs in Australia. That'll be a good little test between the 2 Yorkies next year to see which of Root and Brook can do well, because as a number of our listeners will know, not everyone in Australia thinks that Joe Root's the greatest player of all time, because he's never scored a Test 100 in Australia. And I'm hoping that he bats very well when he comes to Australia, because he's definitely one of the most exciting batsmen to watch at the moment.
On Harry Brook, Sunil, notable from the Indian perspective, he got picked up by Delhi Capitals in the IPL auction. In 2024, he pulled out after the sad death of his grandmother. And in 2023, he played, but only scored 190 runs in 11 games for Sunrisers Hyderabad. How easy is it, or otherwise, is it to carry international test form into the IPL when that comes around?
Well, I took a look at his T20 stats, T20Is actually. He's played 39 games with a strike rate of 146. Now, that's not bad. And forget the test form, even his T20 form seems to be excellent. And I think he must have developed much more confidence. But I'm just saying that the way that he's played across, and if you look at his international average, it's 89, right, compared to his average at home. So I think this definitely it will help him. I think playing for a new team and coming into a new IPL will definitely help him. But I will have one caveat. If you look at Glenn Maxwell, now he's not really performed in the IPL. He's been across 3 or 4 teams and he's blown hot, blown cold. So that's the only thing. The IPL is a tough place. There are lots of matches. There are big players coming in. There are vociferous crowds. It's going to be a difficult thing.
Yeah, it's very exciting, isn't it? And of course, he has got white ball cricket through January. There's the Champions Trophy in February, all leading up to the IPL. So it's not as if players are switching from, red ball test matches straight into that, is it? Sunil, on the New Zealand series, I think you alluded to it before, really, but just the surprise at how, comprehensively England have won these first 2 matches, given what New Zealand achieved in India. Do you think that just took an awful lot out of them, the effort that was required and the enormity of what they achieved in India?
Yes, I think so, to a certain extent, though, ironically, it should have been the other way. Should have given them tremendous confidence to play at home. So in Indian conditions, on spinning pitches, they outplayed, they outthought. They were just better in every way. There was much more determination, much more application, and not just with the spin bowlers, but with the quick bowlers as well. Will O'Rourke, he was very, very good. And if you look at the way that India played against spin, right? Now, of course, I know spin is not a big factor in New Zealand, but the quick bowlers proved themselves in India as well. I mean, Mitchell Santner got his career best figures, which India is happy to give career best figures to a lot of teams. I think what happens is that when you go back to your own conditions, the pressure on you is greater.
Well, there's a full circle moment for Tim Southee, isn't there? With this being his retirement series, and you do feel for him that he's not going to be going out on a series-winning note, no matter what happens in the third Test match. But it has been a fabulous career, and I'm sure we will reflect more on Tim Southee in another show on Stumped.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on ABC and Akashvani.
Next on Stump, let's focus on the Border-Gavaskar Trophy, which Australia have levelled 1-1 with 3 to play after that emphatic 10-wicket victory over India in the day-night test in Adelaide. Boy, they needed to bounce back after Perth, and they did so incredibly. Travis Head crushing a swashbuckling 140 from 141 balls in front of what was an adoring home crowd. But those weren't the only fireworks, because he was involved in some verbals with Mohammad Siraj, who fiercely gestured him off the field when he dismissed him. That resulted in Siraj getting fined 20% of his match fee. Head admitted swearing at Siraj in response, and so he was also reprimanded. Both players have had a demerit point added to their disciplinary records. Before all that happened, the players gave interviews where they seemed to contradict each other as to who'd done and said what. So it did cause a little bit of a stir going into what was the final day of this match. I mean, Jim, on that little incident itself, I mean, that could have developed into a diplomatic incident, as you might say, on day 3, when quotes from Siraj in Hindi were translated into English, saying that Travis Head lied. And that's all played out now. The players embraced at the end of the match. Did you mind what you saw on the field in that moment? No.
Just say, oh, well, these things happen, get on with it and keep playing. It wasn't the most important thing in the game, but the media throw petrol over any opportunity they can get when you get a bit of live talk between players. And the cameras are in there, picking up every word, lip-reading the rest of it. It's blown out of all proportion. And I think that's very sad. The important things about the game, Stark is bowling as well as he's ever bowled in his life. India's batting is very fragile unless Jaswal gets in. Kohli seems to be past his best against really good fast bowling. Travis Head played the innings of the year. He always plays a good one against India, but anyone who can bat like he did is going to swing the game. That was the momentum shifter of all time. So I think we need to concentrate more on what were the good points in terms of the cricket that was played than a minor moment of a little conflagration, a bit of heat and a bit of spite for 2 seconds from one player in particular. But, yeah, we just make too much of all this stuff. Please leave it alone. But, I just enjoy watching cricket, and I know here and there there'll be a flare-up. That's the game, and the game needs a bit of that passion and personality.
Well, the match referees took their action, as you always knew that they would as soon as you saw the send-off. Sunil, in terms of India, what questions and what are the Indian media focusing on leading into the third test?
Well, I think, as Jim said, and I completely agree, you need a little bit of edge in international sport, and any sport for that matter. You need to have drama. You need to have personalities, as he said. Otherwise, it tends to become so boring. I mean, can you imagine any sport without edge, without people, giving it to each other? It'll be the most boring spectacle on earth. So I think it's going to be around there, and it will be there. It has been there, and I think it makes for good viewing. Yes, but we don't need to go overboard. I'll tell you what the Indian media is focusing on right now. I've told you one thing, which is Mohammad Shami going or is he not going?
Yep.
And frankly, that to my mind is not the question. But what they're really focusing on is what is going on with the Indian cricket test team. There's some really sobering stats. Those are coming to the fore, but because we're talking about big names like, Mr. Kohli and Mr. Sharma, right, they are muted. And they're focusing on other people like Jaiswal and Pant and so on and so forth, skirting the issues as we normally tend to do when such big questions come up. But I think somebody needs to cut the Gordian knot and actually take some names and say it's not happening. So that's really what I think is going to be talked about in the Indian media.
Kohli went quite a way to quietening down questions about himself, didn't he, with the 100 at Perth. And runs are the currency, which will always answer some questions. Rohit Sharma, I mean, absolutely questions will be hovering over him when he comes out to bat in this test match, and whether he's opening, whether he's still, back down the middle order. Was that the right call for him to make, to put himself into that position? Sunil, give us these stats that you're talking about, then get that ball rolling.
So let me tell you, in the years 2020 to 24, Virat Kohli's average across 61 innings is 32. Now, for one who's supposed to be part of the fabled Fab Four, I don't think he's in the Fab Four anymore. I don't think he's in the Fab anything right now anymore with that stat. And his overall average across the years that he's played has come down under 50. It's 47.6. Till 2020, his average was 54.8, and he deserved to be in that pantheon of players. Let me tell you a little bit about Rohit Sharma. Rohit Sharma in 24-25, his average since the Bangladesh Test series, in other words, 6 Test matches, 12 completed innings, is 11.83. Now that is, if anybody, even a tail-ender, got 11.83, you'd be looking askance at him. The only captain who's had a lower average, and I've been researching this for some time, a long time ago, was Jeff Crowe of New Zealand. And the other stat that I must tell you is that out of those 12 innings, 8 of those innings were single digit. Now, for a captain to carry a team that has lost 3-0, and you could not chase 148 on your own pitches against New Zealand, I mean, that is despicable. That is not something that you would expect from an Indian team. That is where the alarm bells started ringing, frankly, if you ask me. And when the captain of the team is not performing, right, what sort of impression does it give the others?
That's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped for Akash Varney. Don't forget you can follow us on X. We're at BBCWS Sports and use the hashtag BBC Stumped. And check us out on YouTube as well by going to the BBC World Service YouTube channel. My thanks to Sunil, Gupta, Jim Maxwell, and to all of you for listening. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC Sport production for the BBC World Service in association with ABC and Akashvani.